So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this live webinar from IAB Europe for the Attitudes to Retail Media report. I'll give everyone another 30 seconds or so just to make sure everyone who wants to join can join, and then we will get started with the agenda. Super. Well, I think we can make a start. So, like I said, we are on a live webinar from IAB Europe, where we're going to reveal insights from the Attitudes to Retail Media report. So, if we get into the agenda for the next hour, I'm just going to be opening for 5 minutes. Then I'm going to pass over to Marie-Clare Puffett, the Industry Development and Insights Director at IAB Europe, who's going to be doing a presentation on the IAB Europe Attitudes to Retail Media report. And then after that, we have a panel on the Attitudes to Retail Media, where I'll be joined by Stan Lajouanie from Liveramp and also Matt Hinton from SMG. So, a little bit about myself. I'm Jason Wescott. I'm the Global Head of Commerce Solutions at WPP Media, but more importantly for today, I'm the Chair of the IAB Europe's Retail and Commerce Media Committee, and it's an absolute pleasure to be on this call. Like I've said many times, this is one of my favorite reports of the year, which is now an annual report. So really looking forward to this session and sharing all of these amazing insights with you. Before we get into that, just a little bit of information on our Retail and Commerce Media Committee. Now, this is a multi-stakeholder pan-European group comprised of retailers, retail media networks, media agencies, and advertising technology partners and data companies as well. So you can see on the slide we have a lot of businesses, and you know, this is some of the commerce and retail businesses that are involved in the committee. We also have a lot from across ad tech as well, such as Pubmatic, Magnite, the Trade Desk, Zitcher, Maloko, Cody, agencies as well, Canesso, Publicis, ourselves, WPP Media, SMG, and others. So, you know, what I love about this group is, you know, we've got a lot of experience from all of these different parts of the industry, all coming together to basically help the industry thrive. And I think working with a lot of experienced people who have been in media and been in ad tech for a very long time, you know, they've seen all of this before, you know, whether it's search, social, programmatic. You know, a lot of them have lived through many of the pitfalls when there is, you know, a new and shiny category within digital advertising. And we've all come together to create that guidance to help with the industry. Now we have 4 buckets, if you like, or 4 segments that we focus on within the committee. Number 1 is industry, education, and definitions. So we work on things like the guide to sponsored products, the 101 guide to retail media. We've recently put out some bite-size guides to the different parts of retail media, i.e. on-site, off-site, in-store. We're also running a retail media essentials training program, and more on that later as well. The second section is standardization and guidelines. I think this one to me is the most important and where we're really making a huge impact within the industry. So we published measurement standards for on and off site. We've launched a certification program where retailers and ad tech companies can be certified in line with these standards. and that has just launched, and we're looking forward to our first retailers in Europe becoming certified on that, and that will be Nectar 360 and Albert Heijn. So some very, very exciting news there. And then we also look at, new areas such as incremental sales measurement guidelines as well. The third bucket is market intelligence. So, that's the reason why we're on this webinar today. Things like the Attitudes to Retail Media survey, Pan-European Retail Media Landscape Overview, capability map of retail media networks. A lot of these things are things that can be shared around the industry and just help fill those gaps in knowledge. And finally, our fourth bucket is thought leadership and networking. So this is where we run in-person events, Q&A, blogs, monthly spotlight sessions, and just speaking and networking opportunities all round. So if you are interested in joining, you're not a part of the committee, and you fit that criteria, we would love to have you. Please do visit the IAB Europe website and the Retail Media Hub, and you can reach out to myself or to Marie-Clare Puffett to get involved in the committee. So thank you ever so much. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Marie-Clare to get into the insights.
Thanks, Jason. Hi everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. I'm going to take you through some of the kind of core top insights from our annual Attitudes to Retail Media report. As Jason said, this is the second year we've run this, and it's one of his favourite reports. It's also now one of my favourite reports as well. I love getting the insights from the industry in terms of what's driving growth, and also where we need to be focused as an organisation in terms of what's holding back growth. So I'm going to dig into some of that today, kind of top line, and there's a lot more detail, graphs, etc., commentary, quotes from members as well in the full report. So just quickly, what is the report? So as we said, second year we've run this, and it provides pan-European insight on retail media investment levels. So how much are people investing and where, and the partnerships. The levels of maturity, so how mature kind of both buy side and sell side stakeholders are within retail media, and also the kind of structures, internal structures they have for leveraging retail media. As I mentioned, the drivers and the barriers. So what's really being seen as the core opportunities here, but also what's holding back further investment. It also asks about the primary and core kind of measurement and metrics that both buyers want from retail media and also that retailers are offering. And as with most of our surveys, it also asks about what's going to drive future growth. So I'm going to get into some of that just now. So I'm going to talk about 5 kind of key insights that have come out of the survey this year. So firstly, we see a deepening of buy and sell side partnerships and a diversification of ad portfolios. Secondly, the budgets that are driving investment, so the existing media budgets are shifting, and I'm going to talk a bit about that, and the fact that on-site continues to dominate investment. There's an evolution in terms of organizational models, so the internal structures, and also the teams and how the teams are set up, which is quite interesting. I'm going to talk a bit about the driver and the fact that first-party data kind of continues its dominance, but there are others in the mix as well. And then finally, I'm going to let you all know that fragmentation and the lack of standards persist as barriers to investment, and kind of what Jason's touched on it, what we're trying to do about that within IAB Europe and our committee. So who are the respondents? So we had respondents from 3 core stakeholder groups. So we surveyed the retailers and media owners or retail media networks. We surveyed media agencies, and we surveyed advertisers. For the purposes of this report, we've bucketed advertisers and agencies together as buy side, and sell side refers to the retailers and the retail media network respondents. You can see on the graph on the right that actually the range of roles is quite varied in terms of the types of people that completed the survey. We had media directors, we had programmatic media directors, we had heads of retail media. So a real variety of different respondents. We had around 180 people complete the survey, and as you can see, that's kind of broken down fairly evenly between buy and sell side. So let's get into the actual findings then. So there has been a significant increase in the number of buy-side stakeholders who are actually partnering with retailers that have been partnering with them for more than 1 year. And to us, that suggests a shift towards longer term engagement and obviously longevity in retail media and the propositions from retailers. And then if we look at the sell side, the number of retailers who have had a retail media proposition or offer in place for more than a year has remained consistent, suggesting that obviously many of those kind of, I guess, what we maybe call early mover retailers are maturing their offerings and now focusing on kind of, enhancements such as expanding their ad product portfolio, potentially improving their analytics and measurement dashboards, and formalizing, their processes. And then if we look at the number of retail media networks that are being partnered with, so between the results in 2024 and the results this year, the number of brands working with between 4 and 6 retail media networks has more than doubled. So it's gone from 10% to 24%, so another significant jump. And I think this is probably as advertisers look to diversify their partner mix and, kind of, I guess, pursue multi-channel coverage. The proportion, however, when we look at the proportion engaging with more than 10 media networks has held consistent, which to us implies there is a ceiling, a practical ceiling on how many retail media networks, a team on the buy side will and can manage from a kind of resource and operational point of view. And obviously, the more media networks, the more fragmentation, which makes everything a bit more complex. If we look at where the budgets are coming from, I always find this stat quite interesting in terms of how retail media is being funded. So, we talk a lot about the growth in retail media, lots of, ad spend growth, but actually it's not net new money. The money is coming from existing budgets. So last year it tended to lean more towards the brand and the performance advertising budgets, but actually this year what we've seen is a slight tip. Those two budgets are still top, but actually trade is also more budgets from trade are going into this, which is quite interesting, and it signals to us and I think to the industry that it's really important that we break down those silos, those existing silos, both on the buy and the sell side between the trade marketing teams and the more media buying teams, marketing teams. In terms of where investment is being placed, the on-site is unsurprisingly still dominant. So over 90% of advertisers and agencies are investing more than 41% of their digital ad budgets into those on-site ads. However, we have seen an uptick in the amount being invested into off-site, which suggests, a kind of more diversification in terms of where buyers want to find their audiences, how they want to use their partnerships with retail media networks. We haven't got it on the slide, but just a note on digital in-store. We see this remains kind of really largely untapped. 48% of the respondents said that they report zero digital ad spend into physical retail environments, and I think that is potentially a missed opportunity and maybe something we might get into the panel discussion, but just bear that in mind. So when we ask the sell side about where they're getting their revenues from, it's probably unsurprising that an increasing number of retailers are getting more of their revenues from the on-site ads, and actually just 9% of them are relying on this for off-site and 14% for in-store. So on-site, as I said, is still really dominant. But I do think as the kind of next 12 to 18 months progresses, there will probably be more diversification there. A bit about the kind of teams and the internal structures. So 44% of buy-side stakeholders, so advertisers and agencies, are integrating their retail media buyers into their digital media teams. Now, this is quite significant because if you think about where those budgets are coming from, and as I said, breaking down the silos, I think that's really important that continues, that kind of integration and breaking down those silos continues. This has increased from 34% last year. So yeah, I think a clear move toward, you know, omni-channel alignment and lack of silos. And then on the sell side, 58% of retailers reported to now have a separate retail media sales team. So up until now, obviously, retail media has kind of emerged from trade shopper marketing activations, and that this has significantly increased from 36% in 2024. So again, they're rapidly scaling their dedicated capabilities and seeing the opportunity here that brings to them. So what's driving investment? Unsurprisingly, I don't think I need to tell everyone this, but the first party data that the retailers hold on customers is really what's attracting advertisers and media agencies to spend money here and to allocate advertising budgets. However, we do see a slight uptick in you know, brands wanting to reach their consumers at the point of sale, so reach them in a shopping mindset, but also quite interestingly leverage emerging channels. So think back to, you know, the growth in offsite. They want to leverage their retail media networks to reach new consumers with CTV, with audio, and with out of home. So they want to really activate that data in other environments. So again, that's quite interesting and signals, you know, a more push towards diversification in this space. I talked at the beginning about standards and fragmentation. I think we have a real opportunity here, particularly in Europe, to bridge gaps and build standards and help the structure of the industry. Fragmentation of retail media networks was cited by around 51% of buyers, and the lack of standardization around 53%. They are still the primary challenges for buy-side stakeholders. As Jason mentioned at the beginning, we're doing a lot of work in our committee and with our retailer council to address the lack of standardization and help the industry to build those standards. That has dropped slightly, but it is still, you know, one of the primary problems. We have seen concerns around data availability drop slightly. Then 29% cited this as a problem in 2025 compared to 40% in 2024. So again, signifying a more sophisticated retail media ecosystem. Also a drop in concerns around insufficient technology. 49% cited this as a problem in 2024, so similar amount to those that cited standards as a problem, and that's dropped to 37% in 2025. And I think again we're seeing a lot more partnerships in the industry, a lot more cross collaboration, and I think those types of hurdles are starting to ease off. In terms of the types of standards that that buyers wanted to see, the top ones, same as in 2024, the top ones were media measurement and attribution standards. So that's where we've been obviously focusing our resources. So quick few takeaways. So I think, as I said, retail media it's maturing. We're seeing a kind of a more mature ecosystem, more data partnerships, more technology partnerships happening, but there are still significant hurdles, and I think we need to recognise that as an industry and continue to work together to overcome those. It's becoming a more strategic part of the media mix. You know, it's no longer, I think, seen as just a standalone thing. I think particularly within agencies, it's becoming part of the omni-channel offer. I mean, I've said it kind of in other ways, but more investment in technology, more investment in the products will help address some of those fragmentation and those scalability hurdles. More collaboration with industry bodies such as IAB Europe is important to enhance and drive adoption of standards. And I've put this one at the bottom. I think this is kind of what I think, and I think some of the data signals is that most of the growth now going forwards is going to come from those off-site activations and those partnerships with those emerging and kind of other channels. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand back to Jason for our panel. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marie-Clare. Super interesting. And it's so great, because this is an annual report now, to see the comparisons versus last year and the way that the industry is moving is fascinating and very, very valuable insights there. So now I am delighted to introduce our industry experts for a panel now where we've got a few questions. There is a Q&A box in the chat for this. So we want this to be an involved, an immersive session. So if you do have any questions, please do put them in the box and we will try to address them towards the end if we have enough time to get through the questions. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to our panel just to introduce themselves. Obviously, Marie-Clare needs no introduction, but if I can hand over first to Stan to introduce himself, that would be great.
Thank you very much, Jason, and very nice, being on that panel today and amongst these great speakers. Thank you for the content. Marie-Clare was, I think, super helpful and very interesting. So I'm Stan Lajouanie, and Jason didn't dare pronouncing my full last name. It was a challenge. I'm in charge of the brands for Europe and LATAM at Liveramp. So when we say brands, it means every advertiser we can find on the market. So this covers commerce media, for instance, and all of the brands. And in Europe and Latin America. Very nice being here.
Great to have you, Stan. And Matt.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I'm Matt Hinton. I'm a group partnership director at SMG. So SMG work in-house setting up retail media networks. We work with the likes of Asda, Morrisons, Co-op, Boots. My role is looking after a few of those different partnerships with sort of various people reporting into me across that group and that talented group. I've been at SMG for quite a chunk of time. So in terms of today's panel, I've worked on Morrisons and set that up. I've worked on Asda most recently. So there's a fair amount of different perspectives that I can lend across retail media networks in the UK specifically.
Amazing. And SMG, a key partner with us within the Retail and Commerce Media Committee. So it's great to have you on board. So we're going to kick off with question number one. What's driving the increase in long-term retailer relationships? Are we seeing a shift from tactical to strategic collaboration? And I'm going to go to Stan on this one.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We are seeing a clear shift from a tactical relationship, which is more campaign-based engagements, to a more strategic long-term partnership between the brands and the retailers. I think first thing, and that was very much displayed into the report you shared, Marie-Clare, we are seeing an overall growth and increase in maturity in the retail media ecosystem. And so that brands are not only coming there to test and launch one campaign, and they're not focusing onto short-term conversion attached to one campaign, but they are recognizing the potential to, and this is the purpose, influence the entire customer journey on a more long-term basis. to go from awareness through to loyalty with these consumers. And that requires longer term relationship with the retailers. So we are seeing more and more joint business plans between the retailers and the brands that are covering all type of media that retail media covers. So CRM, personalized, in-store, on-site and off-site for sure. And that's more and more how the brands are approaching the retail media strategy. And I think this is also linked to other factors. First of all, as Marie-Clare said, there is still a lot of fragmentation, but we are seeing consolidation. I think brands are wanting to have more visibility onto the budget they're going to allocate to retail media and to make sure they have the relevant resources. So having a longer term relationship enables them to have better coordination, consistency in the way they approach the use cases, and also efficiency measurement. And I think one last point that has been existing in the ecosystem for a long time is data is now being more and more in the middle of the relationship on the retail media front. First of all, for measurement, for sure, but also for consumer insights and audience building. But it now starts, well, when you put retailer data with consumer data in the middle of the relationship, this can also help the brands on many other topics. Media and the way they interact with shoppers is clearly one thing, but also trade, promotions, pricing, and all of these things are other touch points they have with the consumers. And traditionally in the retail ecosystem, these things are looked at as an annual or pluri-annual frameworks. So this is basically turning and changing the way brands collaborate with retailers with more data, more consumer data-based signals, which they can take into these relationships.
Thank you, Stan. A lot of insight to unpack there. I couldn't agree more in terms of the data collaboration. I think that's one thing that makes retail and commerce media so unique in market, is that, you know, you have the media side, but you have the retail side of things as well, and it's that unique blend of insights, you know, across two worlds that were kind of separate initially, but have now been brought together, that can, you know, create magic when done correctly. I also love what you said initially about just, you know, consistently turning up, which is really, really important. You know, it's not just a tactical sort of, you know, quick purchase thing now, and that is so important in terms of how brands can deliver growth. So a very, very strong opening there. Thank you so much, Stan.
Yeah, and Jason, if I can complete, I think, you know, we saw something in one of Marie-Clare's slide is like retailers splitting their retail media activity to the trade one more and more. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to that report that is going to say that at some point these activities are going to be merged, and like retailer buyers are going to be able to have the full conversation with the sellers on the brand side, covering trade to retail media. This is going to require a lot of organization changes and cultural changes, but I think that maybe in 3 to 4 years, that's something we should see in the report.
Love that, Stan. So guys, you heard it here first. So let's we can revisit that one in 3 or 4 years time. It'll be really, really interesting. But yes, I think that's a hugely debated topic. So it's something I wrote a bit about recently, actually, with someone from Zitcher and Esme from Epsilon as well in our latest blog. So you can check that out via the hub. Great stuff. So we're going to go to Matt now for question number 2. So despite offsite and in-store channels gaining ground, on-site still dominates spend. So what's the tipping point for wider offsite or in-store adoption?
Yeah, I think we, from my perspective and our RMN's perspective that we run at SMG, we have seen a sort of real uptick in how agencies and brands are conversing with us around the capabilities in store. I think we've seen digital screens become more part of the toolkit for an RMN over the last few years. I think now you're looking at 70% of RMNs that have that capability and that offering, which is a real step on. I think the reality of the situation is that if you take CPG as a category, 80% of purchases are still done in a physical store. So you're missing a beat, or you're missing an opportunity if you're not in that store and not advertising at that point of purchase physically. So there's a piece here on 1 point on the education, but 2 on the capability increasing and the opportunity increasing that these RMNs are bringing to market. I found it really interesting when Marie-Clare was talking through her presentation and when we've looked at it prior to today, that CTV is such a big ask from a agency perspective, but only 19% of retailers are actually offering that today. So I think there's still a disparity in terms of what's being asked for versus what's being produced, and we're on that curve of kind of technology enhancement that is only going to increase over the next sort of 6 to 12 months as well across the opportunity. I think you then come to measurement, and how do you say, from an omni-channel perspective and a closed loop perspective, how are you saying that all of this inventory and advertising that is going out, how do we actually reference that back and show what is truly working, what is driving those sales across that full funnel opportunity that retail media now presents? And I think as that capability increases as well, you'll see more investment come that way. I think the final point I'd make is that it's still really difficult from an agency perspective to work with this amount of retail media networks. So whilst the capabilities are increasing and whilst the opportunity is increasing, the stat around the amount of agencies that are working with 10 plus retail media networks decreasing year on year shows that opportunity there to kind of consolidate and bring this together it is so needed. If we're going to really hit this opportunity that is presented in front of us, then we need to create not one front door, but we need to create less front doors than there currently are from an agency perspective to come at this and then invest in the right areas, knowing that it's going to work and knowing that the opportunity doesn't just exist on site.
That's a great insight. I love that, Matt. And there's probably 2 ways around tackling that. One is kind of just consolidating and actually working with less, or 2 is looking for workarounds that aggregate activity within platforms. And I think it was really interesting. One of the takeaways was the level of tech integration needs to increase in order to help deliver scale. So there's probably 2 routes around that. I love what you're saying about purchases in store. It's something I talk about a lot within my day-to-day role, and how can we close that gap between digital activation and in-store physical purchase. And really interesting around the capability as well. So the capability are there, like you said, 70% have the capability, digital in-store screens, but we haven't quite seen that adoption yet. So maybe that's just kind of lagging behind, and we'll catch up. But the good thing to note there is that it's there and it's available, and there's going to be more ways to actually buy that media as things progress. Before I go back to Stan on this one, I just want to bring Marie-Clare in, because Marie-Clare, you talked about one of your points around one of your takeaways around offsite being a big driver of growth. Is there anything sort of additional in more depth that you want to share in relation to this question?
Yeah, I think the reason I say that is because I think, just going back to the first question a little bit, I've said a few times to people in conversations, and have to be careful as the IAB what I say, but I think retail media and the the kind of partnership of the retailer data with existing media data that we have in the ecosystem, it's almost like, I would say, the holy grail of marketing and media. It's almost what we've been trying to get to this entire time, since the inception of digital media buying, or even before that. It's what we've been trying to get to, is really understanding the consumer, and is my advertising driving sales, essentially, is it making a difference? And I feel like that's where we're getting to, and I think the on-site piece is obviously a lot I guess simpler, and kind of, I guess, for some retail media networks, largely just figured out and running very effectively. I think the growth the growth is going to come from offsite once that retailer data, that customer data, starts to, I guess, in a very privacy compliant, data secure way, infuse the rest of the ecosystem. So once I can, as a brand, target a relevant consumer group who is watching something on TV at the right time, and drive them to buy my product or buy my service. And I know at the end of that has happened, and that's happened because of that ad or because of that campaign. That's almost what we've been talking about, at least, a lot of my career, and trying to get to. So I feel like I feel like that's why the growth is going to come from there. The more use cases we have, the more examples we're able to show, the more education we can do of how that all works, is only going to help with this going forwards.
No, I love that, Marie-Clare, and I think like as Matt mentioned towards the end of his answer, the measurement piece is what adds into that element of being the holy grail, but also the access to data as well. And I think that's a great opportunity to bring Stan back in, with anything to build on this question.
Well, not much to add, I would say. I think one key thing that we're seeing is like the consumer behaviors are omni-channel by essence, and this is becoming more and more true. I think there is a stat saying that like European consumers are consuming 45% of European consumers are consuming 3 different CTV channels or something like this, and this is true across all channels. So like at some point in time, if you have relevant data for a brand to address and target these consumers and have better interactions, you need to be able to use them on any channel they are using. But as Matt say, the challenges for the retailers, that they need to be able to deliver, so be well integrated to all of these omni-channel capabilities, but they need to deliver the transparency and the measurement capabilities that brand expect. And this is not only on their end, but also on the media channels end, which are sometimes not really willing to share exposure logs, for instance. But that's clearly, we are at a tipping point, notably because I think while on-site is a core business for most retail media, but it's going to reach at some point saturation, and this is already the case for some retailers that are seeing limited available inventory but growing demand. So how do you respond to that point? I think as a second trend, we are seeing like retailers need to be more equipped for offsite and for in stores, which is like on the offsite piece, a business that is less profitable than onsite because you're not selling the media. So that's one thing for sure. And on the in-store, it's also a business that requires heavy capex. But I think we are seeing retailers more and more equipped on the 2 fronts. So finding the right approach and business model and also product portfolio offerings to be able to match the demand there is on these fronts. So we are clearly at a tipping point. And from what I know at Liveramp, we are helping retailers connect all of their first-party data to all the relevant media channels for activation for sure, but this is already long existing. But we are seeing more and more media players being open to share more visibility and transparency onto the viewership and exposure data through clean rooms, notably. As Marie-Clare was saying, there is a clear need to be fully privacy safe on these type of topics, but this is something that is coming for sure.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And Stan, we're going to stick with you because we're going to move on to question number 3. So how are buyers leveraging first-party data and point of sale proximity to unlock growth across new formats like CTV, which you've touched on, audio, and digital out of home?
Yeah, well, I think this is very much the continuation of the previous topic. And yeah, well, as long as consumers want to be able to consume the content on these different channels, they want it to be adapted and personalized as we can. And so that's I think a great opportunity for retailers to enhance their offering, but there is a matter of integration and how do you do it. And so I think for the retailers as well, there is also a big opportunity for them to collect incremental revenues from these types of partners. So clearly CTV, they don't have the retail purchase-based signals that retailer have. They have large audiences, but they don't have these signals, which are super interesting for them. DOH, same thing. They would really, of course, retailers have a knowledge base that is purely based on stores and geographically, they have geographical attributes. So this is very valuable for these players. So we are, and same thing for audio players. They're lacking that data and they want to drive more demand from the brand. So if they are in a position to provide retail attributes in addition to the audiences they have in their data sets, there is a tremendous value for the brands on the activation side of things, but also clearly on the measurement side of the story. So we are seeing more and more retailers either being in a position to offer onboarding onto these different channels, or starting and opening partnerships with the CTV players, for instance, or DOH or audio players, in order to make their data available to these players so that they can increase their portfolio of offering to the brands. And this is done notably through the use of clean rooms to be fully privacy safe and scalable. But this is something that is growing super fast, and which is a super opportunity for retailers also to monetize their data and knowledge to other types of partner than brands directly.
No, thanks, thanks, Stan. And I'm gonna build on this question. This one isn't in the script. So you know, Matt, Marie-Clare, if you want to jump in, but I feel like we're seeing an evolution in terms of partnerships in this space, and even big dominant players who have integrated AVOD propositions. You know, take Amazon for example. You know, they're looking to extend their reach into the living room by partnering with the likes of Roku, with the likes of Disney, for example. You know, Stan has already touched on the retailer partnerships, you know, with CTV channels, you know, which isn't new, but definitely an exciting and evolving space within retail and commerce media. Any comments on that at all, Marie-Clare, Matt? Feel free to jump in.
I think so. Yeah, I think we're only going to see more of those types of partnerships, right, going forward. And I think the reason being, each of these types of businesses has something unique to bring. So, for example, you know, the partnership with Amazon and Disney is, I would say it's, you know, Disney has probably users, viewers that Amazon doesn't have in its ecosystem, or it's, you know, it's kind of reaching those consumers in a more relevant environment to them. So I think when you look at these partnerships, I always think about what's each one bringing to the table, and it's usually something unique. Excuse me. And I think that's what's exciting, is even these, as you said, Jason, these big dominant players that have, I guess, been the backbone of much of these industries so far, are actually extending their partnerships and open to those partnerships with other players, which I think makes this really interesting going forwards. I think that signals to me, and I think to the industry, that we can expect, you know, a kind of to expect not to live in a world of entire complete silos going forwards. I think we'll always have some, you know, maybe not complete walls, but small fences and kind of partly closed ecosystems. But it signals to me that we're going to have a more probably open, transparent ecosystem going forward, with lots of opportunities for brands and agencies. So I think that's exciting.
No, I love that summation. I mean, the stakes are high, and I think, like you said, you know, it's just about realizing what your blind spots are. And you know, I love the partnership approach, because you know it can often become more than a sum of its parts. Great. I'm going to kick off the next question with Matt, but did you have anything at all to kind of build on that at all, Matt, before we move on to question number 4?
Yeah, I guess the only observation, I mean, I suppose you look at someone like an Amazon, who's such a huge, you know, Goliath in the market. They own such a big portion of the market share, and they're really, I suppose, setting the precedent for how this stuff is going to operate and move forward. I think there's some elements that we touched on in previous questions about other retail media networks that are maybe on their path to setting up and are still sorting out structural side of things and still building out their own capabilities. I think you're going to see the likes of Amazon setting that benchmark for others to then say, okay, that's the blueprint. That's where we get to, or how we partner, or how we do this stuff. But they are, you know, they're way ahead in some of these elements versus other areas as well. So it's great to see that, and it's a good inspiration, I think, for the rest of us as well, as we're building out capability over the next 3-5 years. What does that look like? How are we gonna compete and get to a level where there's a choice to be made when you're deciding who to partner with from a retail media network perspective.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like it's how are we going to compete, and how are we going to leverage our strengths? And that does come back again. I think a lot of the advantage that isn't fully leveraged is the fact that you mentioned earlier is that 80% of sales still do happen in store. So yeah, great stuff. Question number 4. Return on ad spend is still the dominant metric, but is it sufficient for holistic retail media evaluation? And this one is for you, Matt.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the report again says that ROAS is what everyone wants, and predominantly it's what is being provided generally from across the retail media networks as well. I know there was a small gap in terms of some retail media networks not providing it, but in the main, it's there. So if I reference back to my previous answer where I was talking about if people are asking for CTV, we need to be doing more in that space. If people are asking for ROAS, then we need to be reporting ROAS. We need to be showing up in that way and having that as a metric that is kind of front and center of the conversation. That being said, I think incrementality is key. I think you need to, from our perspective, we talk a lot about it. Would that sale have happened anyway? How do we report in a way that shows that is a genuine incremental sale that's come off the back of this activity that we've run, which we need to step outside of your traditional ROAS to deliver on that. And I think interestingly, as we move into a space where we talk about full funnel from a retail media perspective, there's going to be more of the traditional media metrics that we want to talk about as well. So eyeballs, what's the visibility of stuff, what's the reach and frequency. There's Co-op, one of our partners, who did a big study with Lumen relatively recently, where they talked about attention, how they grab attention in store, how people are reacting to brands as they walk around store, and they can show quite conclusively that there is more attention in store from a Co-op perspective than there is with things like out of home or social or other areas like that. And Co-op now have made that data available to agencies, and they're plugging in that data so that when agencies are looking at where to invest, they're not just looking at ROAS or whatever else it may be, that they're also looking at these more traditional media elements that are now being provided by retail media networks as well. So I think there's a way to go in this space from an education perspective, from a capability perspective. But I think retail media networks understand that if they want to compete in the spaces that they're moving into, then they need a different set of a different toolkit, I suppose, to report back on to agencies.
Love that Co-op example, and shout out to Dean Harris and Ellie Pendergrass from the Co-op media team. I thought that example was really interesting because it's bringing that digital level insight, to what is essentially a analog retail media proposition, right? Because it's a lot of the in-store stuff, exciting stuff, but not sort of digital. But it doesn't mean that you can't bring digital insight to it through a measurement partner like Lumen, and some of the insights gained from that study, they actually kind of did surprise me, showing the impact on brand recall and things like that. Really, really fascinating. So yeah, I love that angle. Marie-Clare, anything to build on this in relation to ROAS and incrementality? Topics we've covered a lot, and I see the smile on your face there because we've debated this to death, and a lot of work's gone into it, especially around the standards. But anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I think, Matt made the point about needing to make, have ROAS there, but also think about other more traditional media metrics as well. I think this is really important for everyone to consider is, the way we've built the standards for retail media is we've built ROAS into that, but we've also built media standards into that, viewability, impression counting, clicks, all of these kind of, if you've been in digital media for some time, really quite table stakes, basic stuff. But actually, when we've been discussing with retailers, this is all obviously new to them and new capabilities. So, and I think if we think about, where the growth is coming from with offsite, those media capability, those measurement capabilities exist in, media metrics are only going to become more important. So yeah, that's what I would say. And incrementality, yeah, we've been debating this a lot within our forums, and we'll be having some actual incrementality measurement guidelines coming out in the next couple of months. So, I think there's a lot of debate about what incrementality actually is and what it's not. And I think it needs some education, it needs some guidance. So that's one thing we're trying to do as best as possible.
Looking forward to that. It's a great topic. Cool. We're going to move on to our final sort of pre-planned question. So question number 5. With fragmentation and the lack of standardization cited as top barriers within the report that Marie-Clare went through earlier, how do we encourage adoption of IAB Europe's measurement standards and certification program? And I'm going to come back to you initially on this one, Matt.
Yeah, great. This one's really interesting because it's having worked in and around retail media networks for quite a period now. The way that we get to a place where this will be sort of operationally rolled out is in a world where there's a consequence to it not being rolled out. If you see where I'm coming from, I think the reality is that whilst not all retail media networks have consistency across their metrics, it doesn't mean right now that they're not still getting a piece of the pie. So therefore, in order to really enact this, you need to show up in a way that says by not doing it, you're reducing your footprint or your opportunity from a scale perspective. It's a lot of the retail media networks that have set up are clearly looking at this from multiple angles, but fundamentally it can drive revenue into their business. Okay, it's an opportunity to do that at scale and to do it with relatively low entry costs for them to set something up. So as soon as you start going down a path of saying there needs to be more capability built in, whether that's through expertise of bringing different skill sets into their business to then set up in that particular way, whether that's the operational side in changing historic ways of doing things, you get into a whole conversation that is slightly different from where we are today. So having been in and around the retail media networks, I think the best way of impacting it is through the way that it's through the pockets. I sat down with a CEO of a not to be named RMN relatively recently, whose general comment to me was, if I need to find £1 million, it's a lot quicker and easier to do it through retail media than it is through potatoes. So from their perspective, there is a lot less barrier of entry, a lot less cost, and a lot less back and forth to do this. So that would be my broad scope view. I see, and I think our industry sees why we need to get there. If we want to create a world where we're getting more investment and we're targeting different pots of cash that exist within agency, then we need that consolidation. We need to be able to compare apples with apples, and there needs to be the decisions that are made with those metrics in mind. But I think we've got a way to go convincing retail media networks to come on that journey with us and invest appropriately.
Yeah,
I couldn't have said it better myself, Matt. I think I'm going to have to get Matt selling the certification.
That's it, Matt. Rope you
My new job.
Fantastic. Stan, anything to add?
Well, not much to add, to be honest. I think potentially there is something as well that we are seeing the market is asking for these standards. So there is also a push to be done on the brand side, potentially to they are the ones driving the investment to the retailers, and they are the ones asking the retailers to get more standards across the board. So I think there is a lot of education to be done with the brands also onto understanding what the measurement standards and IAB certification program brings to them, so that they can push that to their retailers. I think would be another angle to attack this. But I'm fully aligned on the fact that basically getting these standards across the board for retailers is going to drive more demand for them and more media dollars from the agencies and from the brands. And also clearly helping the agencies operate across multi-retailers and multi-brands at the same time with standards and and ability for the brands to then compare, because I think you said it, Jason, in the beginning, but like at some point, a given a brand is not going to work with the 6 different retailers that are operating in a given market, but they are going to select the ones where they have the most market penetration or share, and the ones that are bringing and giving the most relevant insights and standards. So clearly, at some point, if they want to stand out and live, well, they will have to adapt these standards and make sure they provide that scale to the brands.
Amazing. Thank you, Stan. And MC, any closing thoughts on this one?
I mean, I think Matt and Stan have covered it. You know, without standards, we're not going to get scale. You know, retail media networks are eventually going to have to adopt standards, whether they like it or they don't like it. I think that's just how life is going to be. And I think, you know, it's there's no surprise that we've obviously been doing this agency roadshow to educate the agencies, the buyers who to Matt's point have the pockets and the money on this program, so they can advocate for it as well. And we are also, just to note, working very closely with the WFA, the World Federation of Advertisers, to educate their members on the program and get them to also advocate for it. Because again, it's all very well and good me telling everyone and Jason telling everyone, but if the you know, the media buyers can actually ask for this and advocate for it, then it's going to help. So
Absolutely. And a lot of that feedback is, you know, it's come directly from advertisers, you know, i.e. our clients. So the information all has to flow in that direction. But excellent. Apologies to Katie, Matt's CEO. I don't think IAB Europe were trying to poach you, but you just gave a very, very good answer. So thank you for that. Thank you so much to our industry experts. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Marie-Clare. Really enjoyed that panel, really enjoyed your insights, and I think the audience would have taken a lot away from that. So I'm going to wrap up the session now. Before we do, just going to share with you a few events being run by IAB Europe. The first one, a bold new leadership event. This is happening in Amsterdam on September the 24th. And it's not just another industry event. This is where leaders are going to unite and impact the future of retail media in Europe. So we're going to have powerful keynotes. We're going to have fireside chats. But I think more importantly, we're actually going to have strategic and technical breakout sessions. A few of the topics is going to be incrementality measurement, retailer first-party data and clean rooms, the evolution of on-site opportunities, retail media and CTV, the evolution of industry standards and commerce media, and also digital in-store buying and measurement. So a lot of the topics that we've kind of covered within this panel and within the attitudes report as well. So a different type of event. A lot of senior leaders from brands are going to be attending this. I'm really, really looking forward to it. If you're not involved, you know, take a look. You can use the QR code. You know, really, really encourage your involvement on this one. And then the next one is our Retail Media Essentials training. So the next date we have for this is the 25th of September, where we're going to have a commerce media measurement deep dive. And that is going to be in person in Amsterdam. So you can, again, enroll via the link and via the QR code. These have been received really, really well. We've had industry thought leaders, Colin Lewis, you know, deliver a lot of this training, IAB's own Yara Daher as well, who is another industry thought leader. So you're in really, really good hands with this, and, you know, very, very well, thoroughly prepared content. And, you know, a lot of the further sessions have been, you know, taking your feedback on board. We're going to very, very quickly go on. I think next we've got the impact of AI on digital advertising survey. So please do get involved in that. The deadline is in a couple of weeks on the 15th of August. Really, really important topic, and really, really important we garner as many responses and we get your opinions in there as possible. So please do take part. And then finally, we have the Mix Awards. This is the 14th year of the Mix Awards that have been going a long time, very, very successful. The 5 themes breaking out here are going to be tech and innovation, content and storytelling, strategic impact and purpose, media channel innovation, and culture, communities, and immersion. The early bird deadline for this is next week, the 7th of August. So if you want those early bird benefits, please do get involved via the QR code here. It's going to be an amazing event. I've gone 1 minute over, so thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your time. We really, really appreciate it. And yeah, look forward to catching up with you next time.